Okay. Are we in? Are we in? I never know when to actually start talking. Look, we got Luke's Property in so early. This is great stuff. Let me invite him up. Everybody live, everybody logging in, joining, just waiting for everybody to get involved. Luke, how we doing?
I'm good, bro. How you doing?
Not too bad, thank you. So let me just introduce the segment real quick. So today is a section called Ask Somebody Else. It's an opportunity to ask somebody within the property space, somebody with a lot of knowledge and experience, all the questions you'd want to ask about a specific subject in property. Today we have Luke from LukesProperties on board. Have your weekend been? Good?
Yeah, good. Relaxing, chilled.
Good. Where are we getting you from today? Are we getting you from London or from Wales?
I'm in London today, bro. Chilling. Calm Sunday.
Good stuff. Okay, so Luke's actually a friend of mine, like a real life friend, not an internet friend or an Instagram friend or a Clubhouse friend, but a real life friend. So it's good to have him on board today. I was excited to have this conversation. I'll do like what I know of your intro. Hopefully it's better than the ones of people that I don't actually know.
Yeah.
And then obviously you can explain yourself a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So Luke's background was in football, some other business, but decided at sort of in his early 30s that he wanted to get into property, looking at various different ways to get into property. The initial first step into it was rent to rent. He's built up a rent to rent portfolio here and in Wales, started doing some BRRR. And has looked at, creative strategies to also manage his portfolio during COVID. I think one of the key reasons why I wanted to get you on today as well is a question I often get asked is, for obviously we're initially based in London, and is because I know you've gone to an area that wasn't your niche, wasn't necessarily your base, but looking at that was an area that you had the capital to invest in to get going earlier. But yeah, go on, give us an introduction of who you are.
Well, yeah, basically I'm Luke. I own a property business and I'm also a property investor as well. So, I wanted to get into rent to rent because low barrier to entry. You can learn the business like that. And by investing outside of London, I can make my money work harder for me. So I can get more rent to rents on the go. I can create a bit of an economy.
Because obviously not everybody is familiar with the term rent to rent. So if you could just explain it.
Yeah, sure. So rent to rent is basically when you rent a property from a landlord or landlady and you re-rent it out to your own tenants basically, and the margin is your profit in between. You do it under the correct contracts, and it can be a good acquisition strategy to get started in property.
And I know there's different types of rent to rent. So what are you doing? Are you doing rent to HMO?
I'm doing rent to HMO. My sort of niche sort of demographic for tenants that I chose was sort of professionals. So I know a lot of people do students or other types of tenants, but we chose professionals because we just felt like the research that we done, that was what was available to us and suited to the products that was available in Newport, which is where we invest.
Which is North Wales or South Wales?
It's South Wales, yeah. So it's about half an hour from Bristol. So if you go along the M4, it takes about 2.5 hours from London.
Well, that's not too bad.
No, it's good. So yeah, we target sort of contractors. I wanted to touch on that really because I feel like that's a bit of a niche for us. Contractors have been going the whole way through COVID as well, so they've sort of kept us going. But if I could speak about sort of our first deal and how that came about, then that would sort of open things up a bit better for us. So yeah. We were searching for months trying to find a rent to rent initially in the beginning. Loads of phone calls, loads of emails to estate agents getting told no over and over again. But then we stumbled across a ship management company that were in the area. Now, the place that we approached through a letting agent, it was a 5-bed sort of new build townhouse. And this particular set of contractors had come into the estate agents asking for this particular property because it was right next to where they were working. But we sort of beat them to it, so to speak. But through my relationship with the letting agent, he sort of said, well, why don't you speak to them and maybe you could put them in, kind of thing. Now they're based overseas, so they're based in Finland. So they probably wouldn't have passed referencing because their company number and registration isn't registered here. So I sort of done my due diligence and worked out that they are quite a big company. So long story short, we took the place on a Friday. I remember driving down there, hands and knees cleaning, me and my dad and my missus. And then
a lot of people don't touch on the when people say properties like hands off, sort of stress free. That there's at the beginning it's very hands on.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I see a lot of people talking on YouTube and all over the internet really about how it's hands free and it's passive, and it can be, and you can get to that point. But I think initially in any business this goes for, I think you should know what you're doing and you should learn every stage of the business before you start to delegate and pass things on.
Particularly with rent to rent, because rent to rent, you have much lower, a lot of the time people are doing rent to rent because the capital is a lot lower. You have to protect your capital with your life almost, because that's what you're using to do your next deal. So I fully understand you don't want to go on your first deal and necessarily pay the cleaners or pay someone to put the furniture.
No,
you got to do it.
Yeah, you got to bootstrap it end of the day. And it's good to learn so you can then show someone later on down the line, as we'll get to, like when you systemize things and you get employees in place and get some help. It's good to be able to tell people, right, this is what I've done, this works, and give people the systems for them to actually give them half a chance of actually being able to do the job that you was originally doing. And then that allows you to then grow.
Particularly if it's not, for a lot of people, properties may be something they want to get into and don't have the expertise. I think knowing stuff from the ground up, they don't have to necessarily do everything, which is fair enough. I saw pictures of me the other day doing the cutting the curtains from IKEA and ironing the strips on to get them ready for the first.
We've done,
so you have to do everything.
You have to do what you got to do end of the day. And
is that you still got that property in your portfolio?
Yeah. So that was our first deal through a letting agent. And then the reason I wanted to talk about it because it goes on to more deals. So those particular clients of ours, when you start out, you're over delivering. So you're doing whatever it takes, basically, you're like, so I remember we got the place ready over the weekend and then we drove back down to London, and my dad actually lives in Newport, South Wales as well. So we were going above and beyond in the beginning to please people, as you do when you're a bit naive when you're starting out. So I remember he was sort of picking them up.
I don't necessarily think that's even a bit naive. Like, you just want to make sure, because it's your first deal is proof of concept. If you did that first deal and it ended up not making you money,
100%,
you could have not got to where you are now. So I don't necessarily think it is naive. I think at the beginning, you've got to do everything you can do to make that a success, to give you the impetus and also the cash flow to go and repeat the process. And that first one is probably the most difficult one, because it's you're obviously fighting against the elements, but you're also fighting an intrinsic battle with yourself to understand that this is actually a real thing. Because you learn it. I want to almost take it back a little bit, because obviously you've spoken about your first deal. But from what was the time frame like? Do you know how many? Not exactly, but from you saying I want to start a rent to rent business, or I even want to get involved in property. From wanting to get involved in property, how long until you realized this rent to rent is the route you wanted to go down initially? And then from wanting to do rent to rent, how long until you got your first deal? Like, what was the time frame like?
So I would say sort of August 2017 was when I sort of made a decision. That was my birthday's in August, so that was a sort of turning point for me. And I thought, right, what's my next move? Where am I going from here? I was in a bit of a lull in life. I needed something to get my teeth into and really run with. So I looked at other strategies, but that one to me just felt like it made sense for us. So August 2017 was when I decided. We incorporated the company in February 2018. So 6 months after that. And then we got our first deal in April 2018. So from deciding I wanted to get into property to actually acquiring our first deal, it was 8 months, something like that.
And that's 8 months of spoken about. That's 8 months of work. That's not just 8 months of let me see when it comes in.
That's 8 months of driving up, on the weekend, looking at places, trying to get deals, viewings, speaking to agents, getting told no, You know, the amount of times I remember sitting in here calling agents and they're just telling me like, yeah, all right, mate, sort of, we've heard it before kind of thing. Sometimes they're not too welcoming with the idea because they feel like you're treading on their toes.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they have most of the stock. So especially landlords, they tend to sort of go with the high street estate agents, don't they? Especially like the older ones, they feel more comfortable with that personal service and they can see a shop and they feel like, yeah, that's more comfortable for me to leave my property with.
But I think obviously doing that over that 8-month period, I'm sure you began to work out the processes that you now implement now. As you mentioned, as you've taken on staff and more people to help with the business, you wouldn't know what those processes are, be able to help somebody like if you've got an intern on objection handling, etc. So you have to go through those steps.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people. It's like the lessons are in the failures, so to speak. So you kind of have to go through that process to really understand what you're doing. But yeah, those first tenants on that first deal, long story short, they've ended up, because we've over-delivered and we've given them such a good service, I'd say around a month to 2 months after that, they had more employees that were coming over from Finland. And it just kind of snowballed from there. So I think one thing that separates us from other operators is similar to the student model, where they're getting tenants in and then it's like 10 months of guaranteed or 11 months of guaranteed income. And it's almost like a let and forget sort of scenario. We were getting these chaps in and it's all under one contract. So I deal directly with their CEO and he pays for their accommodation and I put all 5 lads under one contract and then it's on to the next kind of thing. So that allowed us to, rather than going through 5 different ASTs, 5 different referencing, paperwork, headache, 5 different personalities as well, because that's something else that can come with house shares when you're putting single individuals in. We realized quite quickly, like after that first deal, this is a little niche for us. We could actually scale quite quickly like this. And I'm very aware of like time versus, you know, the time you're putting into something is very important. And like, you need to leverage it in the right way. You need to work smart rather than hard. So I think we were blessed in the sense where we learned that quite quick. And, you know, we furnished it and got the place ready over the weekend. Didn't spend that much, just soft furnishings and cleaned it up. And my dad, when I met them on the Monday, picked them up from the hotel that they were staying at, which is another, I think, entry point for us, is that they were paying quite a lot of money in a hotel, which contractors do. They do tend to stay in hotels.
So in terms of your void period, you know that, especially if you're dealing with the CEO, they're trying to keep their costs down. You can quickly acquire stock.
Exactly.
And I think finding that niche, a lot of the time, people, you know, we ignore these old sayings and they've been there for so long for a reason. Like, if it's not broke, why fix it? 100%. Like, if you've realized that you're working with contractors and you're getting, you know, a good standard of tenant, they're, 100%. You know, giving you demand that you can then go and make sure that you can, you know, you can meet the supply of. It works. We've had a couple of questions come in in regards to this topic. So someone wanted to know, Grants for Family wanted to know, what was your startup capital for your, you know, your first, or just for getting into rent to rent? What did you have as a startup capital?
Think initially, I think, if I think about our first deal, we negotiate things a little bit differently now because we've learned, we negotiate sort of a deposit-free month or rent-free period. So we only ever really start paying them 1 month's rent. Whereas in the beginning, we were paying 2 months. So I think the first deal was, I think, £1,300 rent, which I didn't argue at. I was like, yep, I'll take it, kind of thing. It wasn't like a negotiation.
Because I said yes at that point, you was biting the hand off.
Exactly. It was 8 months of hard work. And at that point, I just wanted my first deal to validate that it was real. You know, I remember speaking to you around that time, and, you know, it was hard. It's difficult. And this is a topic that people don't mention a lot. It's that you got to do a lot of free work in the beginning. And you got to really believe in what you're doing before you actually get to that first stage. But yeah, startup, I would say 1,300, 2 months rent, 2,600, bit of furnishings, soft furnishings. I'd say first deal we probably spent around 3.5 grand, maybe 4 max.
And what's the cash flow for that deal?
So that property cash flows now net £900 pounds per month.
So you're looking at payback period of about what?
Yeah, well,
For 4 5 months.
pretty quick. I mean, that was the light bulb moment for me when we drove up on the weekend. We got it ready. My dad picked them up from the hotel on the Monday, put them into the house, checked them in, showed them how everything works and stuff. And then on the Monday evening, I had full payment, I think, of five grand or something like that. And that was like, okay, this is a real thing now. So that was like the moment where I thought, all right, I'm not looking back now. This is
it's worked. You've seen now. You've had some startup capital. You've seen the money come in.
Exactly.
You've now seen it, and it's also that proof of concept that I spoke about means that you can now go to confidence to another agent and not say, oh, I'm thinking of doing this. It's like, we already do this in your area.
Yeah.
You know, if you need a reference point, you've got an agent who you're working alongside.
That was one thing that I used to do often. Like when I was approaching new clients, I would say like, here's a number of one of my other clients, speak to them and see what we've done.
It's like everyone, when we were speaking to builders, when we're speaking to brokers and anyone, and you're trying to build a team. So even if an agency is trying to decide what, guaranteed rent company or rent to rent company to work with, it's those personal recommendations. And if you said like at the beginning, which is why I said, although over and delivering at the time may not be sustainable for a business, in terms of your growth initially, I'm sure those positive experience.
Well, those things helped a lot. And moving on from that first deal, so then we then secured another one with the same group of tenants. So that was 2 properties giving us a similar cash flow. And then I remember the CEO phoning me asking if we had anything, it was a bit random, in Glasgow, in Scotland. And I was like, oh, that's quite far away.
Bit out of my patch.
Yeah, but me being me, I thought, well, there might be an opportunity here somehow. There might be an angle. Wasn't sure about driving all the way up to Scotland and cleaning up a HMO myself again, but got on the phone again, as you do, and you start phoning around and seeing what's available. Long story short, with that one, I ended up sort of clicking with an estate agent up there, and it made more sense to just place the lads. There was like 7 lads up there working on a barge, like a ship management company. I placed them into, I think, 3 or 4 flats, quite nice new build flats, for a one-off fee, almost like a relocation agent. I was winging it at this point. Do you know what I mean? They're asking me like, what, how much do you charge for this service? I'm like, I've got a rent-to-rent business here, like 150 quid, 200 pound a person. I don't know. But made a nice little drink off of that. And then the relationship just sort of blossomed from there, really. And now today, I'd say that particular company, they rent about 4 to 5 houses from us.
Yeah, so that's now collectively that could sort of be 20 to 30 tenants.
Well, and it's not 30 tenants. It's one CEO that I deal with. So it's one person. If there's any ever problems, which there very rarely is, but if there is, then it's only one person I have to speak to rather than 30 different individuals, which can create some issues. Like when you have lots of separate personalities, characters, it can be quite difficult to manage.
That's interesting. I think the way in which obviously you've managed to build the business, to deal with the objections, and even the example you gave of going above and beyond for the Scotland property, because I think what people underestimate sometimes is if you don't solve that person's problems, you can then no longer become their go-to. So all it takes is that Scottish company they deal with could actually happen to have a sister company in South Wales, for example, and then you lose that relationship. So I think a lot of the time, particularly starting out, I think we've touched on going above and beyond, but a lot of the time I think that's really key. And I think that's obviously you're fortunate enough that you had a relationship with somebody in an area that you wanted to focus on in terms of Wales. But how have you found, what processes have you put in place, or what would you advise somebody is potentially, because we're going to go on to obviously invest in actually buying in that area, but just investing in or building a business in an area that's not your hub. What kind of, from your experience, could you offer as advice?
I think you have to really do your research. So you have to understand the area. So I know they say that a lot and it's a bit cliche, but you have to understand the supply and the demand. You have to understand what's available on the market. You have to understand where your product and service fits in line with the marketplace. Systemizing, you're going to need, you will need boots on the ground, so to speak. So you will need like a local handyman. You will need, your cleaner, your housekeeper.
And did you build that team very early on in terms of, did you have to do much trial and error? Or?
I had to do a lot of trial and error, I've had people that have come on that haven't been up to the standard. And I think you can probably relate to this also, like when you're an entrepreneur, so to speak, you can become a bit of a control freak in a sense where
100%,
like you want to control everything and it has to be done to a certain standard. Otherwise you're not happy. It can create anxiety. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it has to be done to a certain standard. But in actual fact, as I've grown and matured and as the business has matured, you actually have to sort of sack yourself as quick as possible, almost, so to speak. And you have to actually get people in that are going to do the job that you were doing probably better than you.
100%. Because if you're the best at everything in your business, the ability of your business to grow stops at you. Your business can't grow beyond you as an entity. So you have to get people in for those different areas to make sure that they're better than you, that they can actually advise you if you want to grow, to be able
100%.
to move the business forward. I'm gonna just double check. I struggle to read these out when you start listening. So I'll just have a look at this as a question that's come through. What kind of advice would you give to somebody that wants to start that type of investment in the future?
I would say do your research your target area, do your due diligence, really do your due diligence though. So go on Spare Room, type in the postcode, look at the demand, look at your competition, which is important. So look at other operators in the area, see what the level of rooms they're providing are, and just work out where you fit in the marketplace. If you can go high end and you can spend however much, or you don't have to do that. In Newport, it's a lot of old buildings. You've got like old sort of guest house type buildings. They're old tired buildings. So the space is there, they're big rooms, the floor space is good. But if you can be creative and save yourself money initially on the setup costs, it just means you're going to get your money back quicker. And you can still bring a quality product to the marketplace without necessarily spending tens of thousands of pounds. So
because you've understood your market from your initial research.
And then when you get your first one, and then that gives you a picture of where you're at, and then you sort of go from there. But my advice to someone would be understanding your marketplace, understanding the supply and demand, building relationships. It's another one that's key. You have to obviously speak with letting agents, speak with estate agents without treading on their toes, but you need to create some sort of rapport where
explain
when things
your value,
come up,
value proposition and how you can add value as opposed to how it can be.
Like going back to the first deal, that was from quite a large estate agents in South Wales, and you have to proposition it so that everyone's winning. It has to be a win-win for all parties involved. That's the key to business, isn't it? It has to work for people. You can't just have it all your way, and equally it can't be all their way. Otherwise, you're not going to really provide a quality service. So, create a win-win, and just be brave. Just don't be fearful. You're going to get told no. You're going to get, the phone's going to get hung up on you. You're going to get told, look, we don't offer that. Sorry, mate, and stuff. And you just got to get on with it. Dust yourself off and go again.
Don't be afraid to ask why as well. A lot of the time, don't offer that why, as opposed to just like okay and hide away from it. I've had many no's, many no's, and I've been on the phone many times asking, well, why? And quite often you'll have a young sort of letting agent on the phone, and he'll have a superior managing director or whatever who just barely even, he might say, oh, someone's on the phone asking for this, and someone might just look over from the other side of the office and say, nah, that's all headache. We just want to let the place and manage it. But when going back to creating a win-win, those estate agents, they did manage those properties that we took on initially, so they're making 10% or 15%
per
off
month
the bat
anyway,
without any headache, because you're offering the guaranteed rent,
without
which I
any
think is a
headache.
proposition people miss out sometimes.
Yeah, and obviously, like, they don't really do that much for that. I'm not going to like throw any estate agents under the bus, but
at the end of the day, if you can still make your money with them making their 10%, and because don't get me wrong, like, you could, some people be like, oh, but I can cut them out and I can whatever, but then you've gone back and done loads of deals through them. So I think it is about operating with integrity, making sure.
It is, and I have actually. It's funny you say cutting them out, because as time our area to the letting agents, and I think that's what's allowed the landlords to think, well, I'd rather just, I'd rather go with this guy who turns up, and he's the guy who's always fixing things. He's the one who's actually found the tenants, So as time's gone on, those properties where we might have been paying a little bit too much for in the beginning, the landlords have
managed to
decided to work with us direct.
And
we work directly with each other now.
I think to go back to this question, in terms of the way you started out, because I think it's quite interesting, obviously, given our relationship, and I hope you don't mind us going back in time a little bit. But
go back, bro.
Luke's obviously, this was a long time before any property by Kazi, but I've obviously been doing property for a long time before, joining the internet world, which we're also going to touch on. And you've messaged me, you've hit me up, and you said, like, oh, bro, like, I kind of want to get into property. So we've met up because, you always give people an ear, say, I'll do X, Y, or Z. But I think in terms of how would you get started, like, no one's going to give it to you on a plate. So whether it's those no's and objection handling,
100%.
or no one's going to give you a magic book that's going to make you ready for property, like make you ready to just start a business tomorrow. So I think you phoned me and said, oh, I want to get, so I said, oh, do you know what? I kind of fobbed you off a little bit, like, oh, like, go on.
I think it was wise what you did, because
at this stage, go on YouTube, watch this, listen to that, read this, read X, Y, or Z, spoke to just said, and then, but then you've come back to me in like a couple of weeks' time. It's like, I've read all of that. I've been on YouTube. I've seen all of this.
What now?
All of that. Like, what's next? I'll be like, all right. Like, well, I do rent to rent. This is like my strategy. Here's like a brochure that I used to pitch to landlords, so you can kind of build a strategy around that. And then same thing. Now it's not 2 weeks later. It's 2 days later. You come back to me and like, I've read the brochure. These are my notes. Like, what about this? What do we do here? What do we do there? And I think in terms of answering that question about what advice you'd give to somebody who wants to start up, you've really got to be proactive, whether that's with your day-to-day attitudes, with getting up early, with getting, staying healthy, like mind, body and soul and everything, whether that's asking the right questions, networking with the right people, or just doing the right research. It's not going to come easy. It's not overnight. If somebody goes online and sells you a course and says, buy this course and you'll be a property millionaire overnight, like, you've got to be a bit concerned. You should have probably bought the magic beams.
100%. 100%.
I think that's spot on. That's one thing with that. But I think also the other side of that is from obviously the space that you're in. Like I said, I mentioned you played football. And I think football growing up, like whether it's football, music, the arts, like those industries where not everybody makes it. So there is that period where you say
hardly anyone makes it.
Yeah. Like where do I go from here if I've not necessarily got to where I want to, or there's a turning point and my football career's changed? How did you find that transition of, one to the other?
I don't know. I feel like you do learn a lot of skills when you're playing football, transferable skills that you can transfer into business, working together in a sort of a team towards a common goal, delayed gratification. So, you might have to play 40 games before you win a league. So I've always kind of had that concept of, I don't mind putting the work in as long as I'm going to be rewarded later on down the line. I'm fine with that. A lot of the questions and messages that I get from people younger than us, it's like, I need it
or
now,
to be
now,
fair,
now.
Or even older than us.
Or older than us. Or older than us. But I just think, they seem to want everything yesterday. And it's like, it's a culture that I just don't really think that's the way things kind of work. There isn't really any overnight success. And if you do have overnight success, you've got to kind of ask yourself, is that the type of success you want? Because the lessons are in the journey.
Yeah, and is it sustainable as well? A lot of
Is it sustainable?
It might have been like it's that kind of concept of the viral
easy
moment,
come, easy go. Yeah.
Also links you on nicely to your content. I've seen recently, obviously through your page, you've put out a lot more advice for people that are wanting to get into property, or people that may be looking to change their life, or you just invite questions. How have you found, one, like what are you hoping to get out of the type of content you put out, and two, how have you found actually being on the internet, because it can be a strange place?
It's a strange place. I must say I'm enjoying this now because I'm speaking to an actual person, rather than just speaking to a phone that's just not really responding back to me much. So that's one thing. But Instagram, putting questions out, I feel like it feels good to help people. And it's also keeping it fresh in my brain. It's almost like a time log of how the journey's been. I've got my Instagram up now on my laptop, and it keeps things in order, and it reminds me, and it sort of shows me the journey. Because I don't know if you can relate to this, but when you're in amongst it, you can sometimes forget to sort of pat yourself on the back, or even just step back and realize, I've actually come quite a long way.
You don't realize the milestones, because
you don't realize the milestone.
You can't look back.
You just keep going and going. And for me, it's always, what's next? What's next? Can I scale? How do I get bigger? What, more houses, more rent-to-rents. But, I'm sort of starting to learn now that it's, things will happen when they happen. And if you remain to being consistent, deals come and go, and that's another thing that I've learned to do, is actually say no sometimes. Like I got offered a 4-bed HMO the other day, and I had to turn it down just because they only had one bathroom between 4, and I probably could have made 300 quid, 400 quid off of it maybe per month, but that wouldn't really been worth my time. Because as we're going to go on to, I'm now looking at investing, and I'm aware there's only a certain amount of hours in a day, so I want to spend my time doing high value tasks rather than sort of lower value tasks.
Money.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I've learned through the HMOs is that the larger they are, the more of an economy of scale you have, and they just perform better. So 6 bedrooms and above is sort of our minimum now in terms of what we take on, just because they just work better. In a nutshell, really, they have more cash flow. If you have 1 or 2 rooms empty for a week or so, you're still making money. With 4 beds, it tends to sort of be
your exposure is a bit like you said.
Yeah, the margin isn't. Yeah, and the margin isn't really there.
Quicker.
The margin isn't really there. In Newport, like a single let would rent for 600 quid, say, for example. But because there's Article 4 in Newport, which is a legislation by the council that obviously you probably know this, but it limits the amount of HMOs that can be in the area.
There's a cap.
So, there's a cap on it, which in Newport there's around 350 to 400. So that's all we've got to work with. So on one hand, it's good because you've got your ideal customer base there on the HMO register. But in another hand, there's only limited supply.
Yeah. No, I think that's all very interesting. And obviously we've seen now, I think obviously we've spoken a lot. I'm just conscious of time. We've spoken a lot.
Yeah, we're flying. We're going to have to do another one,
Yeah, no, I'll get you back on. Don't worry.
Get me back on.
When you're taking over you're going up to Norfolk, taking over the other side as well.
Come on, man. Come on.
But yes, obviously we've spoken a lot about your journey at the beginning, how you started out, which I think is actually the most important part, because it's getting going. Once you get going and you got that momentum, it's just cracking on, and it's on to the next, onto the next. And obviously you built a rent portfolio. Yeah. There's cash flowing well now. Yeah, starting to build cash flow and retain capital. And I know your next steps has been to start actually to invest in. So investing in the area that you're focusing on, that you said you've learned a lot more about. You've built industry expertise, and I know from my understanding you do investments, and then you also potentially work with investors that maybe don't have the capital to invest in London, but have enough to do a deal in Northport. So was it
South Wales? Newport.
That's it. Yeah. So Newport, and speak to me about. I know maybe your most recent deal, and how you also work with investors to help them You know?
So we've got, so within the business, we've got LukesProperties, which is the brand. That is a one-stop shop for property investors. Basically, if you want to build a portfolio, we can service you by sourcing the property for you. We can project manage the refurbishment if need be. And then we can also let and manage the property at the end of the process. So it's like a one-stop shop, basically. And it's a hands-off way for people who, like you said, in London or other areas who might have some money saved, but they don't think it's enough necessarily to invest in London. Then, you know, it's a place where people can come and build their portfolio sort of simultaneously with us as I'm building mine.
Yeah, because that's like, obviously if you're doing it for yourself, at the end of the day, like whether it's like in where you're based or me in London, we only have a certain amount of capital, but we're seeing deals all the time. So I saw a post recently where you explained that, you know what, if somebody has, you know, I think it was 75,000, identified a property that was 49,000, needed a 10k refurb, and then potentially would have a revaluation at 85,000. I don't want to do the exact numbers, but obviously you could potentially do that, refinance that and get almost all of the investors' money out.
Well, I can give you the exact numbers if you want them.
Go on, give me the numbers.
Well, it's one that we purchased ourselves. So back in November, we purchased a 3-bed end terrace house for £51,000. Other properties that have been done up and modernised on that street have sold for 90k. So there's already quite a bit of meat on the bone already. We plan on spending around £20,000 on that to refurbish it and add some value where we can. So we hope that will revalue for around 90 grand. Although when you look at the market now, sort of comparable properties within the same postcode have revalued for 100,000, 95, but we're being reserved with our numbers just because that's something that you should always do. You've always told me that as well. You should always leave a little buffer.
Yeah, because it's worst case scenario, you're saying you get all your money out. Best case, you get money out and then some. Yeah,
I mean that's something that I actually think may happen, but I'm still being reserved with it, and I've still got in my spreadsheet it's £90,000 that the revalue will be. So you purchase for 50, you spend 20 doing it up, and then in 6 months' time you get a buy-to-let mortgage on it, and then the buy-to-let gives you 75% of the new value. So with £90,000, it's something like 67,500, and if you've only put in 70 grand, then you basically bought a house for 2.5 grand.
You got 2.5 grand, and what if the rental income? What would you say?
The rentals. So the rents have shot up in Wales. Originally, sort of those houses in the valleys, they would rent for around 450, that sort of price, but the market's changed a lot. I mean, we've sourced properties in the same area, and then my management company, have letted them for around £600. So the rent is strong there, the rental demand.
Yeah, I mean, so even if you said if you were making 250 after paying the mortgage, your payback period still a maximum of 10 months, and then it's a good deal. So I think for those, obviously, a lot of people reach out to me potentially to say that they have 40,000, 50, 60, 70, 80,000. We see LukesProperties would be a good place to reach out to potentially to look to build a portfolio, particularly as rents are going up, property prices are going up. To potentially use that money, because what you can do is if you can use that one pot of money to build a portfolio of multiple properties, particularly when you benefit from the rental income, having a good management company in place, and the capital gains. It's
something that maybe someone wouldn't consider without having the boots on the ground, but that's what LukesProperties is there for. It's to compensate for that missing piece to your jigsaw. So you might have the money but not have the boots on the ground or people in the area or your investment area that you've chosen. So it is a one-stop shop to take that away from someone, and they can literally buy, with that type of deal, you could potentially get 2 of those a year using the same pot of money. So as I'm buying mine, I'm seeing other houses that are boarded up, and I'm putting leaflets through the door. I'm trying to speak to owners. I'm going to land registry. So we come across quite a lot of deals similar to the ones that I purchased for myself.
So similar. I've got like a strategy that I do, and it's like because I do in London, it's like a lot higher entry. So it's like a £500,000 strategy, but it's a long-term investment.
Yeah.
Obviously, imagine you said like £100,000. You invest in it with you for 5 years. But over that time, you buy, anywhere, say 15 properties, all of a sudden that £100,000 is now worth 1.5 million plus worth of assets with a load of equity in, and you get your 100. So I understand the model. No, it works really well.
It's a no-brainer, really, if you consider what people are getting in the banks. You know,
no, definitely. I mean, we've got Alfred, who's going to be on in a couple of weeks. Alfred Daisy, he's always shouting about the dead money in the banks.
Yeah, I think I followed him on Instagram. I think.
No, good. He's doing a lot of stuff in Coventry. I always think.
I've seen his stuff. He seems like a good lad. Yeah, no, he's got some good stuff.
It sounds good. Okay, so we got a couple of questions. Again, they might not all be directed to you exactly, but I'm going to do it almost like a little quick fire round. So nothing.
Throw them in, bro. Throw them in.
So I'll just ping them up on the screen, and you give us a quick 30-second answer.
Oh, okay. Tips on finding BMV properties. I know it sounds a little bit basic, but you can find them on Rightmove. People say they're not on there, but I mean, you can find them. They are sometimes things are right under people's noses. Often when you see cash only offers, things like that, that is going to be a below market value deal. You're going to be able to you're going to have to spend 20 to 30 grand on it, but it's still below market value at that price, and there's room to negotiate.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, obviously the below market value or below the value is what it's worth. So if you can see something that other people have missed, then you're adding value instantly.
That's a key point. Yeah.
If you know, you spoke about those HMOs and stuff, if you can see how you could turn that into a really, a product that could rent roll really well, you're adding that value instantly. So it's below market value because of potential that you see.
Yeah. Often that's what it is seeing what other people don't, isn't it?
So how long do you rent the rooms for? Also, when looking for a new tenant, do you tend to be out of pocket? So I guess this is, in terms of your contract durations, and also how have you dealt with void periods?
As I said, like probably 50-60% of the portfolio is almost a let and forget situation where the chaps are in there, they're under one contract, they all work for the same company. But the few house shares that we have done, how do you deal with void periods? Well, you just be proactive, and it's about communication at the end of the day. I mean, you should have something set up in place where your tenants are communicating with you, and if they're going to leave, then you just get on the phone, you market aggressively, and you fill that space as quick as possible. So you just have to be proactive, and communication, knowing someone's going to leave in advance, and then marketing your product. I'd always say, I mean, we leave our adverts up on Spare Room most of the year, just because even when our rooms are filled, just because we want to catch the traffic that's coming in. I mean, the amount of times I've just left ads up and had phone calls from people that have gone on to be long-term clients of ours, just by having your net in the sea, so to speak, to catch the fish.
Let's see what else we got. So how much do you charge for project management of a refurb project and then to manage them?
It's 10% project management, and then ongoing from there, depending on what it is. So if it's a HMO, we would charge around 15% management for that, just because there are more costs and time involved. If it was a single let, then obviously we would just charge the 10%. Ongoing management.
And I guess also the other side of it, if you're sourcing a deal potentially, there'd also be a fee for the sourcing of the deal.
Of course, yeah. But we can talk about that. Like I like to speak to people on the phone and actually have a conversation first. There's no point me sort of saying this is my fee, that's my fee. I personally don't work with anyone that I can't really. They need to be like-minded. Yeah, and I like them to understand where their money is going as well. I'm not just trying to take money from people. I don't need it.
Yeah, and also it comes down to, I think when looking at fees, it comes down to like if I'm giving you a deal that's 50 grand below market value, my fee is probably going to be a lot higher than if I'm giving you a deal at market value.
Yeah, 100%. And the same with if it's a single let or if it's a buy, refurbish, refinance deal. If it's an HMO, obviously the fee's going to be a bit more because they're more expensive. It's more time to go and find. I've got to then go and send someone to go and do however many viewings to find the HMO. I've had quite a few messages from ex-colleagues of mine, football boys, and they just want obviously HMOs because they see it on YouTube, they're high cash flowing strategies, and they just want 10 or 20 of them. And I'm like, well, it's easier said than done. I have to now go and find these HMOs, and there's limited supply. So join the list, and the deal will come through soon.
That's good. So another question. I work fully remotely and I want to buy a really cheap, simple place to live in instead of paying rent. Where should I look? And I think that extended to Wales, Sheffield. I can't see the rest of the question, but I think it's
I work fully remotely.
open.
I want to buy a really cheap, simple place to live in, and instead of paying rent, where should I? Well, that's a bit of a loaded question.
I guess, yeah, it's kind of wedged, but I guess obviously in your mind, it would be Wales because it's an area that you know.
Yeah, and I've got contacts there, and my dad lives there, and it's familiar territory for me. I've heard that the north is quite good. I've heard that Nottingham and Derby, places like that are good. Anywhere where you can get a good yield, a good return on your cash employed. So, yeah, up north or to the west is what I would suggest.
Got a question from Too Cozy. What is a HMO?
A house in multiple occupation. So a shared house, basically. A residential is a normal house, and then you have a multi-let, which is a HMO. So I hope that answers your question, Too Cozy.
Nice. So I think just quickly before we go, where's the vision? Obviously, you've spoken about that you started to obviously buy properties and do your own BRR, build a portfolio. Yeah. You're working with investors, like you said. Like I think you've got a good contact base from your time in football. Is that like where does your passion lie? Are you trying to grow your own portfolio? Are you trying to work with clients? I'm trying
to do both. I'm obviously trying to scale my own portfolio, but I'm also happy to service people at the same time and build theirs as well, because I feel that it's something we should all be doing.
Yeah.
You know, we should all be understanding financial literacy. We should all be understanding how to invest. We should be investing our money rather than spending it on frivolous things. But that's my opinion. I always think sort of 10 years down the line, however long I'm trying to build legacy. So I always look into the future. I don't need for much. I can quite happily draw a modest wage from the company and live within my means, and build the business. So where do I see things going? Aggressively scaling my own portfolio, whilst helping other investors build theirs from scratch, or investors that already have a portfolio of properties and want to just add to it. Maybe diversify.
Do you think you would do any mentorship? Because I've seen obviously you've put a lot of information for beginners and for people starting out. Or do you just like to share your journey?
I like to share. I haven't got anything set up. I know one of the chaps you had on one of the other weeks, is it Tage? He's got a lot of he's got a lot of earn and learn kind of, and I think it's great. But I don't really do anything that I haven't got a huge passion in. Like I love property. Do you know what I mean? I get up every day. I enjoy it. It's something that I like. I like the moving parts. I like the design element of it. I enjoy it. So would I do mentorship? I would in the future, maybe, but it'd have to be under the right sort of situation. I want to mentor people that are already helping themselves, if that makes sense. And we've had that conversation, haven't we? I think I get a lot of messages.
Pre-qualified mentorship, as opposed to just blanket.
Similar to what you've done with me, you know, like when you speak, time is very valuable. So when you offer someone your expertise, you want to know that they're going to put them to action, and actually go and do it. You know, you get a lot of people asking questions, but are they going to have the courage and the minerals to actually go and take action and do it, and get told no a million times, and, you know, lose out on many deals before they get their one deal? Yeah. So in answer to your question, am I going to do mentorship? Not sure. We'll see in the future. I do enjoy it though. I do enjoy talking and helping people when they do ask me messages and questions. I like it.
So maybe light mentorship.
Big portfolio. Big
rent-to-rent business. Also work with investors. Work with all of the England team, basically.
Yeah. Basically, bridge the gap. The gap.
That's good. So I think that's
the plan.
That's potentially a good place to wrap up. So again, tell people where they can find you, what services you can offer. Like, plug yourself right now. Yeah, sure. So if you're interested in investing, then you'd head over to LukesProperties.com. You can download our brochure and have a look and get more of an in-depth view of what we do and the services we provide.
If you're an existing landlord and you want your property managed, or you need to find a tenant, then we also offer lettings and management services. So that would be over at irentproperties.co.uk. Send us an email over there and someone will get back to you shortly. And yeah, I'm on most platforms, but predominantly on Instagram is where you'll find me. So if you're interested in property, you just want to have a chat, then just drop me a message on Instagram and I'll happily respond. And we can book in like a consultation call and we can have a chat and go from there.
Yeah, no, I think that's very good. I think so if you're not already, make sure you're following Luke's Properties, make sure you're following Iron. Yeah. So follow all of those pages. And again, for all the people that have messaged me or are going to see this maybe slightly down the line, that have maybe not the capital to invest in London, but do want to start moving straight away, I definitely think it would be a really good opportunity to engage with Luke to see what potential services he could offer to help build, portfolio at this stage. So again, this has been the HMO/BRR/rent-to-rent/investing outside of London episode.
We've got to do another episode really, because there's a lot more.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think from a journey perspective, there's a lot more. We didn't really go into a lot of your latter stage. You spoke a lot about the beginning, but I think my audience, a lot of them are at early stages. And I think you'll add a lot more value speaking about the struggles as opposed to the wins, because the wins are great, but the wins all over Instagram. The wins are everywhere. Everybody's win on Instagram. So I think an honest conversation.
How can everyone win?
I would love everyone to win, but it's, you know what I mean? It's, can everybody win all of the time? So that's, we definitely will get you back in. Got a couple more books in and get you in after that. I'm going to be back same time, same place next week for another episode of Ask Someone Else. Next week, I've got the lawyer episode, so I'm going to be with the property lawyer. So I think that's a really good one if you have any questions around auction purchases, just general information with solicitors and the process of buying a property. So make sure you get that saved. This will also go on the YouTube and on the Instagram. So if you're catching the end of this, I'll re-upload it. But everyone, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Luke, thank you very much for coming on.
No problem, my brother. Thanks for having me on.
Take care. See you later, everyone.
Cool.